Well, President Obama commenting on the presidential race at a news conference from Japan today, saying Donald Trump's statements have world leaders concerned. Listen.
They're rattled by him, and for good reason, because a lot of the proposals that he's made display either ignorance of world affairs or a cavalier attitude or an interest in getting tweets and headlines instead of actually thinking through what it is that is required to keep America safe.
Let's talk about it with a couple of political experts. Penny Lee is former senior advisor to Senator Harry Reid and a senior advisor with Venn Strategies. Josh Holmes is president of Cavalry LLC and a former chief of staff to Senator Mitch McConnell. Welcome to both of you. Penny, why is a sitting president wading into a political campaign? That's normally off limits.
Oh, come on. Every president, when they're sitting in that office, is always asked about the commentary about, who is going to be replacing them. So it is not abnormal at all. But what he is saying is true. I just got back from 2 weeks in Australia, and I can tell you, from everyone we spoke to, whether it be high schoolers, business leaders, or members of parliament, there is grave concern for the candidacy of Donald Trump. And what he has been saying, both in Twitter and his recklessness, in the words in which he describes world leaders, in which he describes many of the conflicts that are out there. So there is a lot of concern on the world stage about a candidacy of Donald Trump.
All right, Josh, give us your take.
Well, with all due respect to my friend Penny, it's one thing when we have somebody else that's going over and speaking with people and making observations, but when the President of the United States goes overseas, he's representing the country. And it's remarkably irresponsible and remarkably unpresidential for him to weigh in on a domestic political battle and effectively undermine one of the candidates that could very well replace him next January. I mean, in front of the world community and effectively in front of all of the world leaders, saying that somebody essentially is unfit for office is an incredibly irresponsible move for the President of the United States.
This president, Penny, promised a lot in his initial inaugural address, said we were going to have 6% growth, things like that. He hasn't exactly delivered on the promises he's made. Who is he to criticize Donald Trump?
I think he's made a tremendous amount of progress. And, he is not dictator. As we know, he does have a co-equal branch of government. So he can't just say, I want certain things and have it happen. So I think you have seen, look, he took our country from when we were losing 800,000 jobs a month and has had 33 months of straight economic growth or job growth, private sector job growth. He has righted the ship on a lot of different things and stabilized, especially on the economy. He has elevated the debate and had some engaging conversations with regards to many of bringing a coalition together on our foreign policy questions, on our domestic issues, especially as it addresses health care and other things. So I think he has a lot of successes. Climate change and gathering 240 nations to get together on this climate change. There's been a lot of great progress that he has made. So I do think, someone that has been sitting in the Oval Office for the last 6 years is absolutely of authority to say and give his assessment of where the race sits.
I remember. Well, go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I was just going to say, effectively what he's saying is that the world community is rattled by Donald Trump. I can't imagine that there's anything that Donald Trump has said or done at this point that has rattled our allies any more than what President Obama has done in conducting his foreign policy. We're talking about somebody who had a full nuclear deal with Iran over the objections of one of our greatest allies in Israel. The world community has plenty of reason to be rattled about the current state of affairs of American foreign policy, and has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
Yeah, Penny, again, I think back to when we elected him president, and sometimes it's hard to reach back more than 8 years, but he had been an Illinois state senator and then had, a limited period of time in the U.S. Senate, was still sort of trying to find his way around the hallways there when he announced his presidential campaign. So experience isn't necessarily the hallmark that he brought to office, and I guess you have to look at... Go ahead.
When you have someone, a candidate such as Donald Trump, who has said his greatest foreign policy advisors are me, myself, and I, and that he is able to have diplomacy because he staged the Miss Universe pageant in Russia, and that he has called, our leaders in the South or the Mexican leaders in the South rapists, and he's called, Chinese officials corrupt, and he's already had a resolution in the British Parliament saying they don't want him to come over. So you do have example after example of things in which Donald Trump has either said or engaged in that does cause grave concern amongst world leaders.
Josh, when you look back at the accomplishments that she cited of the Obama administration, Bill Clinton famously said when he was president that the American people generally get it right. Well, it looks like at least the people voting in the Republican race thus far have decided that Donald Trump is the guy that they want to represent them. He has clearly tapped into something among American voters.
Well, that's right. I mean, whether the president likes it or not, Donald Trump is a nominee for the Republican Party. Hillary Clinton may very well be the nominee for the Democratic Party, and one of those two is going to be the successor to Barack Obama. So, look, I think the bottom line is that he has a greater responsibility than to sort of pontificate on his opinion of what he thinks of the two candidates overseas. I mean, the President of the United States is going to have to take office in January of 2017 and have authority to speak on behalf of the American people with world leaders, and it just does absolutely no good to have the previous president undermine them before they start.
All right. Josh Holmes and Penny Lee, a couple of political experts. Thank you both.